Hey, everybody, welcome to the Morning Devo today on August 17th, 2022. We're ready to go. We're ready to get in it. And welcome and thank you for joining me. My name's Bo Willette. You could always check out my archives at Bo Willette right there. Just on YouTube. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And I hope you guys enjoy them. You know, they're fun times for me to get in the Word. And I hope they're fun times for you to get in the Word as well. So, hey, let's do this, right? Let's get into it. Okay, so Judges 11c. So we've been doing chapter 11 for a little bit. We're talking about a judge named Jephthah. And man, his background's just phenomenal, right? What a phenomenal background. And really, there's a lot of good application in this chapter. So we've been able to stay in it a little bit, kind of pull out some stuff, and really get some gems from it. By the way, want to welcome Marcia. She's on the ball. She's up early with me in the Devo. So usually I do them at 9, but today I'm a little early. So Marcia's on the ball, though. So welcome, Marcia. So Jephthah is this interesting character. We get a whole, really 2 chapters, or 1 full chapter on this guy. And so he's definitely a major judge. And we're at this place in verse 11 where the elders of Gilead reply to Jephthah. And they say, "The Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And he repeated all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. And so there's this issue of the enemies coming against Israel once again. Israel, especially the land of Gilead, didn't like Jephthah. His family didn't like him. He was born from a prostitute. So they judged him right off the bat, but he was a mighty warrior. And so when the chips were down and the enemy started creeping in, Jephthah became important to these people. And we talked about that. Of course, pulled out some good stuff last couple days. That's been really challenging, I think, but good for us to really think about. Our prejudices, stuff like that. But now they want the warrior on their side. And oh boy, are we quick to turn, aren't we as humans? Quick to go back and forth. Hey, 1 minute you're an enemy, 1 minute you're a friend. Depends on what we need at the time. I know it sounds so shallow, right? But boy, we can be that way as human beings. It's good just to admit that right off the bat, because if you don't admit it, then we might run into some serious, serious problems, right? When you can't see frailty, that really is a problem. If you're building a house and you can't see that there's some frailty in that house, right, then you can't really make it stronger. Yeah, the only way you can build something up better is knowing its weaknesses, knowing where it's weak, and then working on those areas that you're weak in, right? But to ignore the weakness, rough, definitely. Then a storm comes, house falls down. So Jephthah sent messengers to the Ammonite king with the question, "What do you have against us that you have attacked our country?" Now remember, Ammonites go back to a relative of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob fame. So once again, family issues, right? Cousins, that kind of thing, all happening. Always. This is always going on repetitively in the Bible. It is. And there's been a lot that's been said to this place called Ammon that's really important. I was looking up a really neat website. I don't know if you've ever been there before, but it's called gotquestions.org. I know our Pastor Scott, has mentioned this quite a bit, but if you just look up the Ammonites, who were the Ammonites, you'll get some really good stuff, and it'll point out some of the passages we've already been through in Deuteronomy, in Genesis, and what already has been said to them. See, and that's important that we know a little bit of history when we're studying the Bible, just because if you don't and you just open up the Bible to the book of Judges, you might think, oh man, this is so hostile. or, and when you're going through Joshua, you might think that this is such a hostile book. When you don't know the past, you don't know the history with these people and their tribal identities and the things that have been, in a sense, said about them and what they have done. So the Ammonites were no easy peasy, nice, friendly, let's go hike in the mountains together and let's, frolic in the autumn mist, kind of thing. It's not like that. These people had some interesting backgrounds. So always remember that, some pretty bizarre ones too at times. Really interesting practices too. So check out what happens. Hey, Jephthah sends messengers to the Ammonite king and with this question, what do you have against us that you have attacked our country? The king of the Ammonites answered Jephthah's messengers. Now this is cool because this is like political diplomacy going on. Now Jephthah's a mighty warrior, but I must say he does a really good job at this diplomacy that we see here in chapter 11. And we'll see how this plays out. Let's read it. So the Ammonite king answered Jephthah's messengers. When Israel came up out of Egypt, they took away my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, all the way to the Jordan. Now give it back peaceably. So that's what the Ammonites are saying. Hey, that's our land. Jephthah sent back messengers to the Ammonite king saying, this is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. But when they came up out of Egypt, Israel went through the desert to the Red Sea and on to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, give us permission to go through your country. But when the king of Edom would not listen, they sent also to the king of Moab, and he refused. So Israel stayed at Kadesh. Next they traveled through the desert, skirted the lands of Edom and Moab, passed along the eastern side of the country of Moab, and camped on the other side of the Arnon. They did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was its border. Then the Israel is sent messengers. Now, just a little background. Remember, in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, Moses goes through everything that Jephthah is saying. Jephthah is talking about this time with Moses coming out of the land of Egypt, and God said, "Don't touch the Ammonites, don't touch Moab, leave them alone, let them have their land." They're descendants of Lot. Remember Lot, Abraham's nephew. So, hey, don't mess with them. Leave them alone. And that's what Jephthah's relaying. Hey, let's go through the history a little bit. And so his diplomacy is one that's rooted in historical fact, which is great, right? What good diplomacy. Hey, let's look back. Let's see what has happened. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, let us pass through your country to our own place. Let us pass through your country to our own place. Sihon, however, did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. He mustered all of his men and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. So even though Israel's trying to pass through lands during the time of Moses, a lot of those tribes, right, even though relatives, right, family, they were like, man, we don't trust you. And now since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Ammonites... let me go to verse 21. Then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all of his men into Israel's hand. So they did go to war. Israel won. Israel took over the land of the Amorites who lived in that country, capturing all of it from the Arnon to the Jabbok and from the desert to the Jordan. So it's kind of like modern times. So Israel does a battle and wins more land, right? That kind of thing. That's what's going on. Now, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before the people Israel, what right have you to take it over? Will you not take what your god Chemosh gives you? So he asked an interesting question. Why are you dissing on us when you got your own god and your god's Chemosh? And hey, Are you happy? Are you content with where Chemosh has you? Ooh, it's a good question for those that don't worship Yahweh, don't worship, the Lord, Jesus of Nazareth. You know, and that is kind of this question of like, what is your God doing for you? What is serving your God done? Like, why aren't you happy with what your God's done for you? You want to serve that God, the God of lust, the God of narcissism, the God, and I don't mean, again, I don't mean sexual lust per se. I mean just lust in general, your own narcissism. You want to, do those kind of things. Well, if that's your God, then, are you happy with it? And that's a cool question I think Japheth asks. And I find that really, really cool. I find it really neat. So let's go on. And maybe when you're, with someone and they're him-hawing about Jesus, maybe, what we can always do is just say, hey, well, what is the benefit of serving your God? What has your God done for you? What has your God conquered? What victories has your God won? Because everybody's serving either a big G or a little g, right? God. Someone who's some worldview that controls, manifests itself in their life. So Japheth says, now since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven out the Amorites, okay, will you not take what your God Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. Are you better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Remember, he did not curse Israel, that guy back in the book of Numbers. Are you better than Balak, son of Zippor? Who remember he hired Balaam to do that cursing of Israel? It's kind of, he's going over some history again. So if you don't know it, that's okay. But it's cool just to see how, again, this cool diplomacy is, hey, don't you remember some history? Let me share that with you. And sometimes we got to get into the facts of what has happened, so that we have a clear idea of the future, and that's certainly true today, right? If we don't know much about the dictators of old, then it's probably going to happen again, right? Are you better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever quarrel with Israel or fight with them? For 300 years, Israel occupied Heshbon, Arar, the surrounding settlements, and all the towns among the Arnon. Why didn't you retake them during that time? Hey, we've been here for a long time. Why didn't you? I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord be the judge. Let him decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. So he uses a little logic too, like, hey, what is going on today? And why are you so upset today? Like, I've been here for, we've been here a long time. And so I think this is good for us too. Just when I think of today and the Devo, I think of like, hey, how do I speak rationally with people? Do I use facts? Do I get into historical fact? Or do I just make things up? Or am I going off emotion at the present day, of where I'm at emotionally? Or am I able to use just good reason to explain things, really articulate to others, especially those that are in maybe opposition? And that's cool. It's good to think about. I want to be able to rely on facts, and I want to be able to be articulate and good in my logic skills and reasoning. And that means I have to use my mind. I have to think through things. And that is an effort in itself, right? For some, it's really easy. They love using their minds, man. They're all the time just like a computer. Dig, 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 dig. And then there's others that are like me that are kind of like a little brain space out moments, And I don't know if you're like me or not, but that's how I kind of am. And sometimes it takes a real challenge for me to really fix right in there, get right in there and think through things. It takes me a little while. So I got to rev up into gear, so to speak. So it says the king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to the message Japheth sent him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Japheth, and he crossed Gilead and Manasseh, passed through Mizpah of Gilead. And from there he advanced against the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, if you give me the Ammonites into your hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. The idea is a burnt offering is dedication, right? It's like dedicating your whole self to the Lord. It's basically like consecration, giving everything to God, your whole body, mind, soul, spirit. That was the idea of a burnt offering, right? It wasn't a sin offering. It wasn't a guilt offering. It was a consecration offering. So it's interesting when he says, I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. It will be something that it will be given over to the Lord. It will be consecrated to God. Now, that's important to know about the burnt offering. And sure, the burnt offering was most, when we see it as an example in the Bible, we see that it is an animal sacrifice. But it's on behalf of the person. God didn't command human sacrifice. He commanded animal sacrifice to take the place of human beings. A replacement, if you will. A temporary life is given for a life that deserves to be taken, because of breaking the law. And that burnt offering was, even though that animal was being sacrificed, right? You were sacrificing an animal in the burnt offering. It was on your behalf, So it was like you were dedicating your life to God. But even though you weren't laying down your own life, you weren't killing yourself, you weren't putting yourself on the altar and burning yourself. It was the animal's life was taken, and that was representative of you. And you being, in a sense, going up to God, the fumes, the aroma, going up to the Lord. And that barbecue that was on the pit, so to speak, is like a sweet smelling aroma. And it's like you going up, to God, consecration. So something that would be sweet to the Lord, that you would give yourself to God. So I think that's important to know in this event that's going to happen. Then Jephthah went over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into his hands. He devastated 20 towns from Oror to the vicinity of Minnith, as far as the Abel Kerim. Thus Israel subdued Ammon. When Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter? Now remember, he said, when I return in triumph, it says, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites, I will give to the Lord. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. Now it's interesting that he said that in verse 13 or 31 too, because whatever comes out the door of my house to meet me, obviously, I would imagine this is going to be a person. I guess it could be a dog, but, it seems like Japheth knew that it would be of something of value, because coming out of the door of his home to meet him after battle, I can't imagine him thinking it wouldn't be of value. What else could come out of your door of your house to meet you? It wouldn't be your neighbor's dog, I guess, out of your own house. It would have to be someone from your family. Or something from inside your house that lives in your house. So I can imagine this is only going to be family members or personal pets, So Jephthah obviously knew what he was saying was, I would imagine he had to have understood it must have been maybe a human being that's going to come through his house, his door, unless he just lived in the barn and all the animals are there. Or I don't know. And maybe I just don't know enough about their homes. Maybe they lived with the pigs. Who knows? And it says, but when Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter? So Jephthah had a daughter, and she comes out dancing to the sound of tambourines. Wow, so she's really into tunes. And of course, this is victory, right? Jephthah comes back. He's alive. It's a victory dance. It's beautiful. I love it, man. Celebratory. How cool is that? Isn't celebrations awesome? Don't you think like celebrations are just the best? I love it. Your team wins, there's a celebration. A birthday celebrations. I mean, they're fun. They're good. And here, what a great celebration. Hey, my dad's still alive. And she was an only child. Wow, the only child he has. Except for her, he had neither son nor daughter. So when he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh, my daughter, you have made me miserable and wretched because I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." Wow. So here, Jephthah has an interesting vibe. He's so dedicated to the Lord that he doesn't want to break a vow, right? I mean, this is how dedicated Jephthah is now to the Lord, right? The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Jephthah. We see that in verse 29, very intimate, right? Spirit of the Lord comes upon you. Very intimate action. Spirit of God's on this man. This man goes out and he wins battles for Israel. And he does it for people who really don't like him much, right? His own country, his own people really haven't been very fair with him. But he does it. The Spirit of the Lord's upon him. He's thinking even about them, even when they don't really like him, right? He's really loving his enemies, so to speak. And he's really much like Jesus in that way. And here he wants to, honor the Lord and not break a vow. So he rips his clothes when she comes out, his only daughter, and says, "Oh, I can't break a vow." Now, that kind of dedication would also make me think that this guy also knew that you're not supposed to sacrifice human beings. That's what was detestable to Yahweh. You do not sacrifice humans. That is what the pagan world did. This is what the Ammonite folk did. And, people that worshipped Molech, these gods that they would offer human sacrifices to. And this is something that was detestable. So I got to imagine that Jephthah also knew that you're not supposed to sacrifice your daughter. Yeah, don't break a vow, but yeah, don't sacrifice your daughter, bro. That kind of thing. So he says, "I've made this vow." And then he says, "My father," she replied, "you have given your word to the Lord." So he must have told her, "Do to me just as you promised, now that the Lord has avenged you and your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request," she said. "Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry." And he said, "You may go," he said, and he let her go for 2 months. She and the girls went into the hills and wept because she would never marry. After the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed, and she was a virgin. So interesting. He did to her as he said. He offered her as a burnt offering, and she was a virgin. And from this comes the Israelite custom that each year the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gilead. And so we don't get a lot of the detail, meaning we don't know exactly what Jephthah does. All we know is she remains a virgin. That's what we know. Isn't that interesting? Hey, happy birthday, Janice. Whoa, talk about celebration. Hey, where's the tambourine? Ching, ching. Get the tambourine out. Janice's birthday. Oh, man. Happy birthday, sister. Hope you have a great day. All it says is that after the 2 months, she hangs out with her friends. And, man, we all need a little friend time, don't we? All need a little time of a getaway just to hang out with your buddies. And it says, after those 2 months, she returns to her father. 2 months she returns, and then he did to her as he had vowed. He somehow offered her as a burnt offering. How did that look? I don't know. I can't imagine that he offered her as a human sacrifice. That would really be a no-no, with just as breaking your vow would be a no-no, right? So I got to imagine Jephthah's walking with the Lord, that he knows that. But it's got an interesting tag, right? It says, last sentence there in verse 39, and she was a virgin. She remained, never with a man. I don't know if, I got to imagine that there was some kind of replacement, some kind of sacrificial system, which was big in Israel. Of course, that's the way God told him to approach him, was through the blood of a replacement that would represent them before God, not themselves, not their own blood, right? So they wouldn't be like those pagan nations that cut themselves open, and be like, see, God, see my dedication. No, it wasn't like that at all. And so, the other way of looking at this is, if Jephthah did this, holy cow, man. Wow, what a breaking of a commandment. And, we see that throughout the Bible too, that some of these people, man, they really biff it like Gilead, right? Laura says it might be that she was dedicated as Samuel was dedicated to the temple. Yeah, could be, that she was offered as a dedication offering to the Lord. Absolutely. Like 1 Samuel chapter 1 there, 1 and 2. You can check that out. We see in the book of Judges guys like Gilead and all of them really. It seems like all the judges all have these interesting quirks about them, man. Like, 1 minute they're doing great. The next minute it's like super faceplant, right? Just explosion of disobedience. And so I don't put it past, that idea that it was absolutely, there's no way Jephthah could have done that in offering his own daughter, because other people have made serious mistakes. And it shows that Israel was really messed up in a lot of ways, right? Doing okay at times, doing horrible. Even the judges doing okay, doing horrible. And wow, it's just hard for us to think like, man, what a burden that is to think about for sure. And then I love this custom. Each year, the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah, the Gileadite. And this is what I love, is this idea of commemoration, the idea of, remembering an event, the idea of remembering a person. Obviously they're remembering her amazing courage, her faith. Remember what she said to Jephthah? Hey, don't, you made a vow to the Lord. You made a vow to the Lord. Wow. Talk about a faithful woman. Man, that's pretty hardcore. You made a vow, you're going to stick to that vow. That is insane, right? Insane what I mean is in an amazing faith way, The idea of, hey, you want to follow God, you follow God. We're going to hold fast to what we say before the Lord. That kind of idea is really beautiful. And to have these women commemorate that, and I think those qualities about her, it really speaks to me of, do I commemorate, those who have been in my life that really have impacted my life in amazing ways. And, what kind of ways do I commemorate them? Do I take time? Do I take 4 days? Do I take a day? Do I take an hour? Do I take a minute? And just reflect and thank God for those people, those examples of the faith to me. And I think that's a great Devo in the morning, is to think about that, is to think about, hey, what kind of people do I commemorate in my life, and maybe make a list of some of those people, and have a time where, man, I remember them, and I remember, the impact that they made. Obviously, this young woman made a very large impact on the people, and they wanted to commemorate that courage and faithfulness and those character qualities, every year, and so what a special time, for sure. And so we have to remember our history. We have to remember, the good parts, the not so good parts. We have to be able to use our heads rationally, use logic, be able to speak to people in good, articulate ways. And we have to remember, those people that have really impacted our lives, So, man, very cool. Interesting chapter, to say the least. But it's not the most interesting in the book of Judges. That is yet to come. So we will catch you guys all later. You guys have a great, great, great day. Okay? Bye-bye.